Hello, I'm Charlotte Cohen and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, views and analysis you need on Thursday the 5th of February. And what an action-packed night we had last night.
Allan on the byline, cuts it back, and Mikey Moore gets exactly what he deserves on the night. He's been absolutely outstanding. 5-1 Rangers.
Rangers emphatically closed the gap on Hearts. Is this a week that changes the destiny of the title? And it's not just results at the top of the league that could prove decisive.
Goal, Hibernian! Hibs have snatched a winner. They were trailing by 2-1 with 90 minutes on the clock.
Have results put an end to Dundee United top 6 hopes? And there were big results further down the table as Livy stay lagooned at the bottom.
Livingston have been moving the ball quite well, not really created an opportunity, but it's Falkirk who are 2-0 ahead. Corner whipped in, let him head on. I think it's Barney Stewart that gets it over the line to put Falkirk 2-0 ahead.
We've got the context and analysis you need to make sense of the league.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
And alongside me to do that, former Hearts and Dundee United manager Robbie Neilson. Robbie, good morning. It's heating up in the Premiership, isn't it?
It certainly is. I think obviously last night's results or the night before as well, St Mirren getting the victory against Hearts has clogged it all up, and then a couple of big games for Hearts coming up as well, obviously the Derby and then Rangers. So yeah, it's starting to get that stage of the season where the excitement builds.
Absolutely, and alongside us to chat about everything, former Hibs and Celtic midfielder Scott Allan. Scott, good morning. Have you been enjoying what you've been seeing this season?
I have. We're now getting to that end now where I think we're going week to week when results are going to have a huge impact in the league. I think you see that the other night with Hearts. I just think with law averages, when you go down to 10 men 3 times in the space of a month, it's one of the games you aren't going to go over the line, and it proved to be that way for Hearts. And then it was over to Rangers to go and put a performance in at home. First half probably wasn't the performance they were looking for. Still got a goal up to the penalty, but second half was a lot more what you would expect from Rangers. They were probably as creative as I've seen them. As much as Kilmarnock were down to 10 men, they used the extra man really well and turned out to be a really good win for Rangers.
Yeah, well, plenty to get into with Robbie and Scott. So let's start at the top of the table. You both touched on the Hearts game on Tuesday night. Robbie, do you think that is potentially a seismic moment in the title race?
As Scott touched on there, I think that it's just week to week now. Can they get back to put a consistent run in? Can they recover from a difficult result? But, St Mirren's always a difficult place to go for anyone. And I just don't see any of the 3 top teams going on a 6, 7, 8 game winning run. So, I don't think it'll be a seismic hit to Hearts. I think they'll regroup again. The red card obviously made a big difference to the game. It was difficult for them, but you've seen in previous weeks that they've managed to kind of recover from that and pick up points, maximum points at times. So it'll be a hard one to take, but they're still in a great position. Massive game now coming up, obviously next Tuesday, I think it is, against Hibs and then Rangers. So the next 2 games for them will probably dictate what way the season's going to go.
Well, yeah, Scott, Robbie mentions the sending off. I mean, that seems to be kind of becoming a real problem for Hearts, this lack of discipline. I think 3 sendings off in 5 games. I mean, how do you stop that?
How do you stop? Well, as a coach, there's not much you can do with that. Then comes down to individual players and in small moments in games. I think 2 of them have been last man. I think Halkett has to go for it. Same as Swallow up at Dundee has to go for it. It's one of the ones. And we've seen similar sort of things throughout the league, especially over the last couple of weeks where it's been last man. It was in Hearts' favour against Celtic a couple of weeks ago, and it's just part of the game. You have to deal with it. They have dealt with it really well in the previous 2 games, but I think as Robbie touched on, going to St Mirren, it can be very difficult. St Mirren then were just trying to make you defend, and that is what they've done, and ultimately score a goal from a set piece, which has actually been Hearts' main source of goals at times this season. So I think it's just a case of dusting yourself down and getting players back fit. I think that is the key. When you take out Lawrence Shankland, who's your main focal point, and a Cammy Devlin, who's been a real driving force in the midfield, it would hurt any team. But I think like Mark Leonard coming in, I've been excited by him, looks really good on the ball. Beningame coming back in, probably didn't have the effect that Derek McInnes was looking for. But I just feel that is how the season is going from week to week. We're going to see so many twists and turns.
Absolutely. And elsewhere, obviously Rangers closing the gap, picking up a big win. I suppose a win that the fans have probably been crying out for, lots of goals. Robbie, what have you made of Skov Olsen? Because he came with a lot of hype. The first maybe game, people kind of weren't sure about him, but do you think he's starting to find his feet now?
Yeah, I think it just takes a bit of time to bed into big clubs. You know, it's difficult, especially when they're at the top end of the table. So, you know, I think we're very quick to judge in Scottish football. You know, and especially when guys are coming, you know, from a different league, sometimes a different culture as well. We expect them to come straight into it. You know, so I think you just got to give guys time. You know, and it's a difficult environment to come into at the best of time if you're coming in the summer for a pre-season. So yeah, just give them time and he'll get there. You know.
And I mean, Scott, what about Ryan Naderi? He came in for a big fee. We saw a first glimpse of him last night. Any standout first impressions of their new striker?
No, I wouldn't say any standout. I think coming in, you're playing against Kilmarnock, who body's on the line. The only thing I think he'll be disappointed that one chance he gets, presents himself in the middle of the box. And he tries to do the right thing. He tries to shape it around the leg of the Kilmarnock player into that bottom corner that just whistles by the post. What he probably needs is that to go in the back of the net, especially early on when you're coming third tier German football into a club with expectations like you have at Rangers. So I think it's far too early to judge in that front. But he's a different sort of player. That's what I would say. He looked quite awkward at times in terms of running style, but didn't look as if he was slow or that. He just didn't really have space to run in behind to really see some of the attributes. But what Rangers needed was someone. They put a lot of crosses in the box. Someone who can go and attack it. I think when the weeks come, you're going to see a lot more of that. But what it does give Rangers is a completely different option from what they've had previously. Because Termiti's not that sort of player.
Yeah, I suppose time will tell what's going to come of him at Rangers. Celtic obviously didn't play last night, so didn't have the opportunity to try and get another 3 points on the board. But the big talking point for them is still the transfer window. 5 players in, all on loan. Do you think, Robbie, Celtic are in a better position now than they were, a stronger position now than they were at the start of the January window, or even 2 days before it closed?
To be honest, I'm really, really surprised that they didn't invest more heavily in the January window. You know, I was expecting them, you know, once they made the decision about the manager and Martin came in on a more permanent basis, I just thought they would go a bit more heavy and bring some players in, you know. So to bring in 5 loan players, it's a difficult window at the best of time to bring players in if you're spending money, you know, but never mind if you're bringing loans in, because generally you're getting guys that maybe aren't involved in the club they're at, you know. So to bring in, you know, I think is it Slavanka, is how we pronounce it, and then a boy from Bournemouth, you get Brentford lad as well. You know, they're not established really first team players in my opinion, you know. So time will tell if they're going to come in and they're going to really influence the squad. So yeah, it was an interesting window. I expected a lot more business from them, really, to give them a push in the league. But, you know, it'll be interesting to see what the recruitment's like now, because we probably don't really know much about these players.
Yeah, it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how they get on. And, I mean, just looking at last night, them not being able to play that game, Scott, what's that going to do for them? They didn't have the chance to go and really put pressure on Hearts and Rangers. They're going to have to wait, potentially play that game, I don't know, weeks, maybe even a month down the line when they've got such a busy schedule already.
It's just, I think on the face of it, it's just one of the things in football. It's really, for Martin O'Neill and his players, it's really out of your control. You can't legislate for a pitch not being playable. And I know Aberdeen spoke about the amount of rainfall and snow there has been up there. So, as I says, it's unfortunate from a Celtic point of view. It maybe been a chance to give guys coming on, as well. You talk about the signings coming on maybe late on in the game and getting some minutes and getting a real realisation of what it's like playing football here in Scotland. But listen, it was a tough one for Celtic, because as much as you want them to invest and sign players for the next 1 to 2 years, we don't know who the manager's going to be next season. I think that would have played a huge part. I remember at the start of the window, I thought a lot of the business would be short term, and it certainly seems that way. I'm sure Junior Adamu, I think he's the one with a view to buy. I'm not entirely sure it's him, but I think it is him who's a view to buy. Javan Chira comes in the last couple of weeks, gets an assist against Hearts, and then scores a fantastic header last weekend. So you just can't really tell where the one's coming in until we see them on the pitch, especially with the expectation and which the Celtic fans demand as soon as you get going in there. It's the same as Rangers. There's no really time to settle in, especially when there's so much at stake. But that fixture pile up down the line could prove it to go in Rangers and Hearts' favour.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be, again, interesting to see how this all plays out. As you both say, it's week to week now, so just depends. Motherwell are another team who have been in and about it. A lot of talk about the Motherwell fans are not going to be very happy for me making this suggestion, but not that they'll win the title, but that they'll have a big say in where the title ends up at the end of the season. But they're still there or thereabouts. Robbie, what do you make of their chances? I mean, top four looks potentially very likely.
Yeah, I think they've been great to watch this season. I've really enjoyed it. I've even over here in Belgium, I've watched quite a few of their games just to see the way they play, because I like the style, I like the way they build the game, and although they have a bit of possession, they're quite direct as well. So, I don't think they're not going to win the title, put it that way, but I think they will have a good say in it. I think it's going to be a fantastic season for them. I can see them finishing fourth. I don't think they'll go into that third top three positions, which I think for them at the stage they're at the moment is a fantastic season. Can they build on it next year? I think that'll be dependent on if they can keep their key players. I think getting Welsh back, keeping Maswanise as well is huge for them going into the end of the season. If they can finish fourth in the league, I think it's been an absolutely unbelievable season for them. Will they go and push on higher up? I'd like to see it, but I just don't think they will go to the top three up there.
I suppose that the issue for Motherwell is Hearts doing so well kind of pushes what they've been doing further down. I guess if we were talking about, Celtic and Rangers fighting out at the top two and Hearts aren't doing as well as they are, then all of a sudden Motherwell's season maybe looks, it already looks great, but maybe looks that bit better if you've not got Hearts in the mix as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. Hearts are doing so well that the focus is on them. Over the years, it's always kind of predominantly been Rangers and Celtic and maybe one other, but you look at Murrow, but you also look at Falkirk as well, the job that John McGlynn's doing, again, phenomenal. To come from League One, Championship and now top six and, I think 6-8 points ahead of Aberdeen. So there's these two guys have been kind of, I wouldn't say flying under the radar, but probably because we've not had a League One or outside Rangers and Celtic for nearly 40 years, I think it is, potentially more than that, I don't know. It's you're not really getting the publicity they probably should get, but I think everyone knows that both John and Jens have done a fantastic job this season.
Well, meanwhile, the middle of the table is no less intriguing. Robbie mentions Falkirk. Scott, they're setting themselves up very nicely to finish for a top six position. John McGlynn would have bitten your hand off for that at the start of the season. Yeah,
of course, obviously coming up from the Championship, and it's well known, coming from League One and Championship into the Premiership, it can be difficult, but what he's done, he's managed to keep a good nucleus of group, and he's created a real bond between the players. I think first and foremost, before you even get to talk about how they play in the football side of it, really threatening, pace in the wings. Henderson's been fantastic at the back for me, and Connor Allan, who he came to Celtic Hearts with us last year. He was a young kid at Rangers. He got experience last year. He's slotted into this central defence division, looks so comfortable on the ball. So that's been a really good partnership. As much as the midfield, Spencer and Tate kind of been in the same position the last few years. They've just went from strength to strength. And then he gets the additions in. Louis Mars comes in last night against Livingston, played behind Barney Stewart. Two of them I thought were outstanding, especially off the ball. And that's what John McGlynn's been. That's what he certainly gave Falkirk this year. They haven't just played one way. They've adapted in certain games. That was a tricky game last night. They were the only team that Livingston had beat this season. And we know how difficult they made it for Falkirk last year at times. So to go there, first half, they were by far the better side. Second half, Livingston really threw everything they had at them, and they came through it. I think that was a big test for them. As much as Livingston were bottom of the league, just one of their mental challenges, because Livingston seemed to have had their number up until last night. So for me, there's now a bit of distance between themselves and Aberdeen and Dundee United. I just see Falkirk winning games. I think they also were talking about Motherwell having a say in where the title ends. Falkirk's not an easy game for anybody just now either.
Yeah, definitely not. And just talking about Dundee United, they obviously lost out to Hibs. I mean, Robbie, that's a big win for Hibs, particularly coming and getting that goal so late on. That's going to do wonders for them.
I think the both sides, the nature of the finish to the game, Dundee United winning with a couple of minutes to go, and then Hibs then swing it and score, I think, a 94th, 95th minute winner. It's a real blow for Dundee United, trying to get themselves into that top six. I think it's going to be very difficult for them to do it now. I don't really see it, the swing of points. I think they're 11 points behind now. And as Scott touched on, that space in that top flight, you've got Falkirk in there, Motherwell in there, Hibs in the top three as well. So, yeah, it was a real tough one for Dundee United last night. On the other side of it, Hibs, fantastic win for them. Gets them back going again a wee bit. I think they've kind of, they've kind of been up and down this season. I think it's been a difficult one for them. I've not really had a lot of consistency in not just their game, but picking up points. Obviously, Kieran Bowie away now as well. Big loss for them. So, yeah, I think for them, if Hibs can stay in the top six, which I think they probably will, I think it's been a decent season, but not a great one. And also, Scott and I have played it over in Edinburgh. When the other side's doing really well, it's quite difficult to keep looking at the papers and the media all the time, and it heaps a bit of pressure on the other side.
Yeah, Scott, what's that like? If you're on one side of Edinburgh and you're seeing all this talk, and the other side is doing so well. I suppose with the derby coming up, that probably gives them even more incentive to go and get one over on them.
Well, I'm only 34, Charlotte, so I don't think when I was at Hibs I was looking in the papers and they were top of the league. It was more if there were a space, it was a place in front of you. If you're Hibs, you want to finish in front of Hearts. If you're Hearts, you want to finish in front of Hibs, and that just comes, there's no getting away. That's added pressure to Davy Gray. That's why I think the going out of the Scottish Cup so early on to Dunfermline was one of the results that really would have frustrated Davy Gray, because when you see Hearts doing so well, the fans are then looking at the cup run. Can they get to a final and give themselves a chance of a bit of silverware? What I would say is I felt Hibs played really well against Rangers at the weekend. Could have came away with 3 points. Last night, you're integrating some new players. Obviously 6 signings come in for Hibs. You've lost Kieran Bowie, McGrath, who's been a real standout for Hibs this season's injured, and Josh Mulligan, who also has been a real driving force in the midfield. So you're having to add players who you've signed into the fold very early on. I think that's quite difficult. So for Hibs last night, just to get the win, and the manner of the win, he scored so late on with a fantastic header from Soutall. I think they're the sort of wins that really give you something to build on. So these last 2 performances off the back of losing to Falkirk in the manner that they did in Dunfermline, I think it sets Hibs up for a really good part of the second half of the season.
Dean, because it kind of seems like they've not got a new manager. Yeah, they've been signing players, but the manager search seems to have kind of slowed down. We're not really hearing a huge amount about it. Do you think this season is kind of becoming a write-off for them?
Yeah, I think the manager situation is a strange one, an interesting one. Like, I can understand, the situation where they maybe don't want to bring a manager in the January window, because potentially the recruitment is maybe getting done by the sporting director. So as soon as he brings something in, the manager then wants an input in the signing of players. But now that the window's shut, I would expect him to try and get someone in as, I don't say as quick as possible, but pretty soon. Because what it'll do is, one, it'll give them a lift, to try and push them into that top 6, but also it'll give whoever's coming in an opportunity to really see the players and start planning for next season. Because it's been a season for Aberdeen that, to be honest, it's not been good enough for them. So they need to start planning for next season now. And the earlier they start that by bringing a head coach in, then the better for them. So was I surprised that they didn't bring MD in January? A little bit, but I can understand it because of the potential structure of the recruitment department. But now that the window's shut, I would expect them to be kind of getting into overdrive to try and get someone in, unless they're waiting for somebody to run their contract down, and it's more of a compensation issue that they don't want to pay it, and they want to get someone out on a free. If you're an Aberdeen fan, you want to see progress, you want to see winning football, you want to see someone coming in and actually building a future. So yeah, it's been a long process, and it's been that long that we've kind of moved on from it. A lot of people, we're not really talking about it now a lot. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where it goes.
Yeah, that's true. We haven't spoken about it on the podcast in a wee while as well. So just shows you what happens. But further down the table, St Mirren and Dundee. St Mirren obviously picking up that big win against Hearts. Dundee not getting to play their game due to the waterlogged pitch. But I don't know, Scott, do you see them catching up to the teams at the kind of top end of the bottom half?
That's a good question, Charlotte. I think it was a great win for St Mirren on Tuesday night. But I just don't think domestically we've seen enough from them. I don't think they look a huge goal threat, and I think that's always a concern. What we've seen with St Mirren this season take the League Cup out of the equation. If you're talking about domestically, they've been conceding goals that you're not used to seeing, and ultimately in the final third they just haven't been clinical. But it'll be a game that Stephen Robinson will use to try and drive his players forward. I think Devaney coming in from Manchester United, he was a real calming influence in the middle of the park next to Goga. Dundee, on the other hand, they've managed to pick out results as the season's gone on. I think they were obviously tipped to be the strugglers early on. That Premier Sports Cup run didn't do them the world of good, but they seem to be getting the right sort of players in. Obviously Congreve, Ugan in the wings been standouts for me. They've added Scott Wright to that, who comes down from Birmingham with a really good pedigree. He would be someone who you think the final third can really light up, open doors and score goals. Ethan Hamlet in the middle of the park as well, another one who's been an excellent young midfielder in the league. But I just feel between they two, I think there'll be often where they'll win a game, lose a couple, draw a game, whereas Dundee United and Aberdeen above them, if they get it right, I think they should still pick up enough wins just to keep themselves in distance away from the two teams that we just spoke about there. So for me, it's happening all throughout the league this season. Teams are taking points off everybody, and we've got a long way to go still. But for me, Livingston would be the ones, I think, at this time who we're really wondering where that win's going to come from.
Finally, let's have a look at the bottom of the table, because it's getting interesting down there. Kilmarnock looked like they were maybe having a bit of a resurgence. Big win over Aberdeen. They go down to 10 men in the opening 5 or 6 minutes against Rangers last night. I suppose Neil McCann saying in his post-match press conference he thought maybe the scoreline flattered Rangers. Robbie, do you see that them being able to bounce back from this and pick up that momentum that they had from the game against Aberdeen?
When you go to Ibrox, Parkhead and these ones, and if you lose a man after 4 or 5 minutes like they did, and I know Neil didn't really speak about the incident, but he kind of acknowledged his understanding of it. I was quite surprised, to be honest, when I watched it, because I watched the highlights last night of it, and the double jeopardy law, it's a different subject to talk about, but I just felt it's meant to, that was brought in to stop, did he try to play the ball? Probably no, but did he mean to bring the guy down? Probably no. So I think for me, a penalty kick and a yellow card would have been better, but that totally changes the game. And to a certain extent, it also takes the pressure off Kilmarnock, because expectation levels then go out the window, It's then just about, can they try and get a performance out of the game? Can they try and get something out of the game? And what they probably got out of the game was they had a few decent opportunities. They actually played pretty well. They created some opportunities against 11 players. So I'm sure, I've known Neil pretty well. Neil's a positive guy. He will use that as a real positive for the team and say, look, we've went there, all right, forget about the scoreline, but we've actually created some good chances. We've done a great the week before. Can we take that into the next game? The next game's against St Mirren, so it's a huge game for them. So, I think that actually they'll see last night's performance as a positive and forget about the result. And I think that the signings they brought in quite a number. Again, a lot of guys we probably don't really know a lot about. So the coming weeks will tell us whether they're going to really push the club forward. Will they catch the guys in front of them? I think it'll be very difficult. I think it's between them and Livy for that playoff spot, but I think Killie will be the ones that will be the playoff spot at the moment.
Well, Scott, what about Livy? You kind of touched on them a minute ago, but another difficult night for them. Do you think this change of manager has changed anything for them?
Listen, I think when you give a team a 2-goal lead, I think that'll be the thing that really frustrates Marv. Defensively, the 2 goals that they give away are so poor. You look at the first one, are they playing out, are they not playing out? It's a decent press from Falkirk, but I still think if you're playing out to your fullback, there should be a bit of movement. If you pop it in, you get out the other side and you come out to pressure. That's a team though when you're bottom of the league. If you're not really clear in your message about how you want to play, that little bit of indecision can cost you, especially when you're playing against a team like Falkirk who are flying high at this moment in time. Second goal defensively, how Louis Marsh, he literally stands at the back post before the corner's even taken and manages to tap it in when no defender attached himself to him to go and win the ball. That's things I think it's sometimes out of the control of the manager. Robbie will know better than me, where you can set a team up as much as you want, but you have to take individual responsibility for these sort of moments, especially when you're at the bottom of the league. What Marv will take is the response in the second half. I think the second half they deserved to get something out of the game, whether that was a draw or not. They really pushed forward to create chances, and there was a bit of aggression and appetite there, which we just haven't seen enough from Livingston this season. But there's a lot of experience in that team. I think Marvin Bartley's got to look for more from his experienced players, and I'm talking about experience. You're talking about 5 or 6 guys in their 30s who have had good careers. I think you need to be relying heavily on them to get you out of this mess, but it's not going to be easy. Sometimes it comes down to a quality thing. Do teams round about you have more quality in areas where you can go and win games? I think they do. So it'll be a really tough ask for Marv to get them out of the trouble that they're in.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the big things when I watched Livy is that senior teams that are towards the bottom end of the table, they have to be strong defensively, but they also have to find a way to score goals. And they're not creating, or they're not going to create a lot of chances, so they have to try and score more goals from set plays. When you look at my season, I think that defenders, Danny Wilson's the only one that scored a goal, I think. Montano maybe, but plays more kind of higher up on the pitch at times as well. So they probably need to look at situations where can we be defensively really, really solid and not give away opportunities, and then in both boxes at set plays, can we improve? Because you see they lose a goal last night from one, but they're not. The big thing is they're not scoring goals from it, and ultimately they're in a situation at the moment where they need to win games. Really, they need to win games to try and get out of the situation they're in. So I would think that Marvin, I would hope to think that he's looking at set plays and going, right, we need to focus a lot of our training on that, because generally Scott knows what most of us do is we train all week and then we do 10 minutes of set plays on a Friday, and then we go into the game on a Saturday, and it's probably 75% of our chance of scoring goals is from set plays, but it's only been 2% of our training week. So it's trying to swing that, and you see a lot of the teams like Brentford a couple of years ago, finished top half of the Premiership because they were plus, I think, 18 or 19 set plays. So it's such a big part of the season. And I think when you look at the Livy squad, they've got to score more goals for that. So you've got to be asking your defenders to be coming up, and they've got to score goals, and then they've got to keep them on their side. So yeah, I think that if they want to do that, that's a huge, huge focus for them towards the end of the season.
That is all we've got time for. Many thanks to Robbie and Scott, and thank you for listening. Remember, we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day, so make sure you don't miss out. Subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on in your phone. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll catch you again very soon.
For everything you need to know about your team this season, download the BBC Sport app. All the latest news, goal updates, stats and scores, and insight and analysis. Just select your club to get the biggest stories and best content at your fingertips. What a result. Download the BBC Sport app for everything you need to know about your team this season.